Today we're going to tie a fly by the name of Beats Me by the late Bill Alspach. He was a steelheader here in the Lewis-Clark Valley here in Idaho. We're going to tie it on a Gamakatsu T10-3H size 4. We're going to start with UTC 140 in black. I'm going to start by dressing the hook. Take your thread to the rear, just about to the hook point, and then take it back up to the front of the hook. For this, we're going to tie our wing in first. We're going to tie it over the eye of the hook, and then at the end of the fly, fold it back. This keeps it from ever pulling out. So we're going to use gray fox squirrel for the wing. So I've cut out a small clump of that. I've stripped the fuzz, underfur, from out of it. I'm going to put it in my hair stacker. Give it a few good taps. And remove that from my hair stacker. Now we want the wing, when we're done, to extend to about the back of the hook. So we're going to take a quick measurement. And then we're going to tie it in with the tips extending over the eye of the hook. This might seem weird to some of you, but just bear with me on it. So if you do a couple loose wraps, it kind of gives you a chance to see if when you fold it back, if it'll be long enough. It's looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple tighter wraps, binding that down to the hook. Then I'm going to trim those butt ends. Now we're going to take our thread, wrap over those butt ends, covering them up, and then take your thread to the rear of the hook. This fly has a silver tag. We're going to use a small mylar to make that. So we're going to tie it in with the gold side facing us. That way when we wrap it, the silver side will be up. Do a couple binding wraps. Go ahead and throw a half hitch in there so we don't lose our spot. Take your thread over to your bobbin rest. Now the first wrap I like to do by hand just to make sure that it wraps the way I want it. Tighten your tension nut on your Norvise and take touching wraps, being careful not to hit the hook point with your mylar because it will cut it. And then take it back up with touching wraps over top, back into your tie-in point. Grab your thread. Do a couple securing wraps. Then we're going to use the same thread as our rib. So rather than cutting it off, we're going to take it, pull it towards the rear gently, and wrap back over top of it, all the way to where that tag starts. And then you can stow this in your jaws for later until we're ready to rib the fly. So we want to keep a smooth underbody on this fly. So next up, we're going to tie in the tail. So for that, we're using a golden pheasant crest. And throughout this process, trying to keep a smooth body, I am continually spinning my thread counterclockwise just to flatten it out a little bit. Since we're using a Unifloss, keeping a smooth underbody is really going to be key to making this fly look good. Alright, so we have that tied in. We're going to keep taking wraps over top of this, trying to maintain that smooth underbody. Take that all the way up to where those butts are for the wing section and trim any extra off. Now we're going to tie in our fuchsia uni stretch. We're going to tie that in at about the 2/3 point. Now for this, we're going to do a down and back method, so go ahead and throw in another half hitch. Take your thread over to your bobbin rest. And start wrapping your uni stretch all the way to the rear of the hook. Making sure to cover all of your black thread as you go. Again, we're just trying to keep a nice, smooth body on this fly. Right, take that all the way back up to your tie-in point. Do a couple secure wraps. And then go ahead and trim that excess out. Next up, we're going to rib the fly, so go ahead and throw another half hitch in there so we don't lose any of our work. Take your thread over to your bobbin rest. And now we'll do 5 to 6 wraps. Any more than that's overkill. Take a couple securing wraps. And then I like to pull that back and wrap over it again just to really make sure it's seated in and it's not going to come out. Trim away your excess. Now we're going to tie the hackle in. So for this, we've just got a grizzly saddle hackle. So I'm just going to tie that in with the, right at that 2/3 point. Then the thorax of the fly is going to be black small chenille. So I'm going to strip off some of the end fuzz on that. That way we have a nice small tie-in point. Tie that down. At this point, since we're going to be wrapping it, it doesn't have to be a super smooth underbody, but take your thread back up to where your wing is at. Go ahead and throw a half hitch in there. Take your thread over to your bobbin rest. Now we're going to roll that chenille up to the front of the fly. Take a couple securing wraps. Go ahead and trim off that excess, being sure not to cut your thread while you do it. And now it's time to palmer that grizzly hackle through the thorax. So we're going to strip preen the fibers down. So we're going to want these to angle slightly rearward. So I like to take my scissors and just kind of bend those barbules back a little bit. And then as we wrap that, we're going to try to coax those fibers back as well. Take a couple securing wraps. And then trim off the excess. Okay. So now we're to the wing. So, easiest way to do this is to start from the front. Take your hands, pull all of that back, and I like to use my thumbnail to give a little bit of a crease there. Just helps kind of train it to go back. And then take a few wraps over top of it. We're going to actually start by just building a thread dam here in front of it. Try to hands out of the way so you can see. Once we have that thread dam built, we're going to take a somewhat loose wrap over top and tighten it as we go. And then we're just going to continue making that nice, neat little head, kind of draining your thread dam in the front and the wraps over the wing. Once the head is to your satisfaction, go ahead and add, I like to do 3 to 5 turns of finish. Alright, I'm done. There we have it. Go ahead and cut your thread. And there we have it. Beats me. Recently I've started using just a light layer of UV Loon fly finish just to finish that head, give it a little bit of a shine. There we have it. A Beats Me by the late Bill Alspach.